Hello everyone, I am Tass, and I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Badger event in which the giant badger is added to the game. However, that's not the biggest thing that happened today. Of course, as some of you may have noticed, we have a journey event, but with that journey event comes a gigantic nerf to several of the journey troops within the game. Basically all of them, all the ones that have the gem spawn mechanic. This applies to all new and old journey troops that have the spawn mechanic. Essentially what happened to them is they got a 3 higher mana cost, going from 12 to 15, as well as an effective 5 less gem spawn. They spawn 1 less natural gem from their just normal spawn, so instead of doing 3, they do 2, and their boost ratio has also been moved down from 2 instead of 3. So it is going to be creating 2, and then plus 2 for every single construct in this particular situation, meaning it will cap out at a total of 10 if you have 4 constructs, gaining 8 total from those. Whereas before, it would have had a base of 3, and then for every single one of those constructs, it would have got an additional 12 for 15 total. And of course, the shininess in all situations give it an extra +1. So in the current state of the game, the best you could possibly get out of a spawn is 10 or 11. 10 if you have a full team of whatever the actual typing is, in this case construct, and 11 if you have that, plus it being shiny, as in shiny level 2. In order to have that extra singular gem spawn. This is quite a heavy nerf to how many they can end up creating. Not only does their higher mana cost, basically meaning they can't be a mana accumulation anymore, or mana accumulator anymore. They still can offset it a little, but you can't depend it on being your only mana accumulator, or even your primary mana accumulator for that matter, due to how high the mana cost is. But even when it does cast, you have to build your entire team around whatever the typing is in order to make it work. And, you know, that's not as big of a deal in things like the actual journey event necessarily, but in a lot of other game modes where you won't be able to do that as easily, or you might even have to sacrifice like a troop and have 1 less, it is going to do almost no gem spawn now. If you compare it to things that can already create like 10, but have no condition on creating those 10, it is going to fall very, very far behind a lot of things, and it essentially makes most of them unusable, or at least not to the same degree that you would have used them in the past. So a lot of teams like the Egress build, the Chalcedony builds with full construct teams, a lot of those kind of things just won't be ran anymore. You're just going to run different mana accumulators, as these are pretty much only going to serve the purpose of their journey event and then very rarely be used after the fact. It'll still be good in some of the restrictions, like obviously if we end up getting a Strix restriction, which I think we have for PvP this week, and you literally have nothing else other than like an Egress E cattle to end up using with some finesse or something, like you can still go down that route. It won't be able to loop anywhere near as well, but you'll still be able to go down that route and hope that it ends up working out if nothing else. But its gem spawn is going to be way more inconsistent, way less extra turns, you're going to get way less mana, and there's a good chance you might not even be able to get all of its mana back. And the weird thing is some of these are shiny and some of these aren't. Obviously, the ones that aren't shiny get hit even harder. Like something like Chalcedony, it currently cannot be shiny to any degree. Whereas, of course, Egress and some of the other ones are shiny. So they weren't hit as hard, but are still hit pretty hard nonetheless. So do be mindful of that if you're going to be using any. We do have a refund option. This is the first time we've had a refund in a very, very, very long time in this game. Last time I think was Bandit back in like 2019 or something. It's been a long time. That's how we have this untraded Bandit, which is actually one kind of funny thing that you can do with these now. So if you want to have something a little bit unique, though, do keep in mind it makes it so they don't count till the Kingdom upgrade. But you can see right now I have this thing as Gold Elite. However, we can go and refund it. What does refund do? Not much. Due to recent balance changes, for a limited time you can elect to recover all souls and trait stones. That's it. You'll get all the souls back and all the trait stones back for it. However, there's an interesting interaction with this. Of course, in order to Gold Elite a troop, you have to have it fully traded, fully leveled, fully ascended, but most notably, fully traded. However, if you go and refund this, since it only refunds all souls and trait stones, you can actually still have it at Gold Elite level while not having their final trait. So you can technically refund all of these and get your trait stones back for the final trait, since all their Pathfinder events are done, so you technically don't need that final trait. This does make it so it doesn't count towards Kingdom bonus anymore. However, it's still kind of funny to have, so you can have like kind of more unique troops like this. Obviously, Bandit actually benefits from not having Stealthy, but it's still kind of funny that you could have these. So even though it's a pretty hard nerf, at least we can kind of get something out of it. So I haven't actually done this for one of these yet, but let's just go through the whole process. So of course, we'll go and refund our Chalcedony. We should now have a mail that was just sent to us that should have all of the trait stones and souls. Keep in mind, regardless of if you use orbed or not, you will always simply just get the soul amount and the trait stone amount. you will not get back, like, let's say you use 2 orange orbs on this for some reason. You do not get those orange orbs back. It'll simply be the souls and pretty much everything that you see here, regardless of which way you actually use to upgrade them. But we'll go click claim on this, and now if we go back to our troop, we will see that Chalcedony is now, of course, fully upgraded. That's not where I need to go. Right over here. So if we go over to Chalcedony, we can see it's now level 10, which is the lowest we could be with our VIP level, and you can see that we don't have any of the traits. However, of course, if we go to more upgrades, get our traits back, and specifically don't click the final one, we can now see we have not the Pathfinder, but we have all the useful one. And now we have a double-traded Chalcedony that is gold elite leveled, but doesn't have its final trait. Is that particularly useful? No, but another one to join the party of refunded troops. So I might keep all of them like that. I probably will. Not going to do all of them right now, obviously, but we'll see. The biggest issue with this is if any kingdom ever requires you to upgrade X number of troops to be fully traded from a kingdom, this no longer counts as a fully traded troop. However, if a kingdom tells you you need 15 gold elite levels or 20 gold elite levels, this does still count as a gold elite level for kingdom upgrade, but does not count as a fully traded troop. So a little bit of a funny thing that you could do, and to have almost like a discontinued troop in a sense, as these are never going to get nerfed again, obviously. There's nothing left to nerf from these things. So if you end up going by the end of this week, having them all refunded, you'll have a unique troop that not a lot of other people will have. A gold elite troop with no final trait. So a little bit of a souvenir from the nerfing, if nothing else. Kind of like that weird nerfed bandit. Except the bandit actually gains a benefit from it, whereas those are more so just for the vanity's sake. Anyways, as far as other things that we have going on that isn't the gigantic nerfed journey event, let's start for the event key drop table. So, of course, it is associated to Forest of Thorns, as we have a Forest of Thorns week. Actually, before I even get to that, because I was so focused on the other thing, we didn't even go over to new troop. So, new troop, is it good? No. But you can stock up on green, brown arcanes. As far as what it does, destroys a column, deals a bunch of damage to the last enemy and stuns them, and then pulls both itself and them to the friends. This is okay. I like the premise of what it does. It just doesn't do it that well. It reminds me a bit of Ogress, except Ogress doesn't actually pull the other person. It just pulls itself. But the same mana cost as Ogress is basically just weaker Ogress. I do like the premise of being able to like attack something and move both you and it to the front while putting a bunch of debuffs on them. Like this just stuns it. But it just doesn't have enough follow-up. It doesn't really have any kind of good skull damage. Just get like bloodthirsty, but it's not like it gains enrage from this or puts entangle on them or something else. Stun does get rid of any like their skull reduction or stuff, but for the most part, doesn't really do that much. But this premise on a legend, on a mythic, actually balanced to be good, could be kind of nice. It doesn't do enough, and compared to other things of its exact mana costs of even lower rarity of Ogress, it is just weaker Ogress in most situations. You're going to get far more value from that than you ever will from Giant's Badger. So unfortunately, pretty useless troop that'll just fill up another slot for upgrading the kingdom. I have no clue what star level it can reach, but it doesn't really matter, as it's pretty much stuck at 26 star. It's a green kingdom, so you ideally want to be upgrading Zolkiri first if you haven't already maxed it. 30 star Zolkiri is super high priority prior to getting Forest of Thorns upgraded at all. So definitely make sure to do Zolkiri first if you haven't already. But yeah, it's pretty much stuck at power level 26, as is pretty much every kingdom in the game, due to just not having enough deeds in the game until later down the line. Anyways, event key drop table. So, is it worth it? Not really. There's a few utility trips you might want to pick up depending on what you're looking for. But I actually ended up unmythicking one of the teams. I can't remember which one it was for. But there's just not that many good mythics. I think it was for the Underspire. But there's just not that many good mythics in this place. Pretty much all three of them you can live completely without. King Bloodwood is just a bleed entangler, which there are very few use cases for bleed in the current state of the game, and there are already plenty of other tanglers. Its ability is very average with no follow-up. We have this thing, which is really bad, just barriers and chance all allies and gives them some life. Nothing really particularly special there. Traits also pretty underwhelming. Yasmin's Chosen, nowhere near as good as the purple version that we got of this recently for web. Mostly because there's so many other ways to entangle that you don't gain as much of a benefit from this. So just not really worth using compared to other similar options. And there are a few legends that are kind of interesting from this place, if nothing else, that you might want to pick up. The two most noteworthy things you probably want to make sure you get before, or if you don't already have, with your event keys this week is King Avalon. He's a 50% mana start for all elves. This is most notably good with Arachnian Weaver, but there are a few other use cases for it with just various elves from other kingdoms. It is not particularly good synergy within this own kingdom, but it is very good synergy just across elves across the entire game. And also pretty good for the PvP restriction when you have to use elves. Getting them all with 50% mana start is a great way to get them rolling. The other one that you probably want to make sure you get Forest Troll. Out of all of the trolls that are of this category, like the doubling of a color and then +3 for 12 mana cost, out of every single one of them, I would say Forest Troll is overall the most useful. It has Entangle on Skull with 33% score reduction while being able to go for green, and green I do feel like is one of those colors that is used a bit more often, so it has quite a bit of synergies. Most noteworthy one is probably Double Truffle into Mirage Queen or something similar. However, there are plenty of other ways that you could use it to feed green, and it reminds me a lot of Bog Strider in that regard. It just has like that score reduction and Entangle with a really good mana accumulation option, and he just does it off the Elemental Giant, which has both Titan synergy if you use Titan Hero Class, as well as, of course, Elemental synergy if you use something like Mirage Queen. And those are probably the biggest two that you want to pick up. If you have the utility things here and there that aren't used as much, like Grave Seer, Savani Mora, which actually is kind of good for the event this week, but for the most part, this is a pretty skippable event key week, with the main thing that you're really seeking being King Avalon for his 50% mana start to Elves, which is very useful, not necessarily this week, but into the future, though there are some things you can use it for this week, which we'll get to when we go over all the teams. Anyways, as far as the guild-related event, we have the Super Mega Ultra new nerfed Journey event. There is another change that they actually did as of this. The level scaling is now slightly less to compensate for the fact that the Journey troop does nothing now. You now also have a little bit less level scaling. So even though you only have a team of 3 now instead of 4, you do have the enemy team gaining less levels over time. I think it's like 2 less every single time it like moves up incrementally. They said on the post that's like 10% less reduction. However, now that your troop is about 10 times worse, it's quite a bit of a different ratio. Even if your enemies are about 10% weaker, you are magnitudes weaker compared to what you were before, no longer having an infinite loop. One thing to keep in mind, well, for one, you do still have to use the Journey Troop. It gives up to 3 times score when you fully ascend it, so make sure to fully ascend it and actually put one on your team, otherwise you do not get 3 times score, which is very important. But it does have 2 times magic. Even though it won't loop that much, it still gives you some mana. You can still kind of put it in your last slot or somewhere further back and just have it cast occasionally. It is still going to hit single targets pretty hard, so it's a good finisher option. But that is about all it's going to do with how badly it got nerfed on its gem spawn. But especially if you use a different hero class. Like, for example, I'm using a mech here because Bork, the Bork synergy, just to get things rolling. And if you're not using a beast hero class, that's already 1 less gem spawn for it, or 2 less, technically. Or, 1 less boost ratio. So that's already bringing it down to an 8 gem spawn, or 9 if you have it shiny, compared to its 10 or 11 that it could have. So it's already taken quite a bit of a hit there. As far as overall options that we have, as much as I want to build a Black Beast team, I do believe you lose points if you have allies not by the end of a fight. Though that would be kind of fun to use if nothing else. But as far as what we really have to use, the mythics here are pretty abysmal. If you are going to use one, it's going to be Pan. I think I actually do on the other team. Use a singular Pan. There are some Devour shenanigans you could do with Amarak, but I feel like it's going to be a little too slow. We do have an okay True Damager out of Basilisk. Once again, Devour is probably going to be too inconsistent, though I do use one on the low rarity team just because there's not as many options to really get out. Obviously, we have the thing that we have to use, the good old Edelwing. Surquan Hadley's not going to do much. Bork's going to be our main mana accumulator, probably for both. Actually, I think I went mech on both teams. It's just a really solid mana accumulation. Just keep spamming until you get all the mana you need to cast whatever you have. We're using Black Manacle in this situation. We are allowed to use any brown weapon. So generally speaking, type in all enemies here and use whatever weapon you have that says biggest number is pretty much it. Use either Black Manacle, Doomed Club, Dustbringer. If you got it from the event week last week, you use the Temporal Scythe. I didn't show it here, though. I did do it for one of the teams, I think, this week. War and Peace are pretty easy to get one. Even the Ruby thing you can end up using. Actually, now that I think about it, Ruby might actually be a little bit better at Black Manacle. This is the low rarity team that we're showing here, not the high rarity one. But you can even use that because they're true damage to all. So quite a few options as far as what you want to use for weapons, if nothing else. Though the troop options, you're pretty much just mana accumulating into your weapon. For both teams, it's going to be mostly your strategy. And then you kind of just have this thing here for a little bit of backup mana accumulation. No longer can you use it as the entirety of your team and just keep spam clicking it like you used to be able to in the past. As far as scoring, still the same as always been. Just click bigger number. So right here would go for 35. And just keep doing that until you have all the points you need to get all the rewards for your guild. And just do that until the end. Anyways. So, other things we have going on this week. Hey, Tributes ready. Let me go grab that. So, other thing. Oh, wow, this is a pretty big one. Though we do have more kingdoms than ever. Speaking of which, we actually have a... Well, I'll get to that in a second. But we have a fun event this Friday. So, Tuesday, we have ourselves Primal Rift. This is a green-purple restriction. The final fight is fine. You generally just spam Alder Father until you win. So, it's a pretty okay faction. Green-purple does mean we have access to Thrall Leprechaun, so any Thrall Leprechaun teams you like using, just plop in whatever your favorite options are for that, and you're good to go. Wednesday, we have ourselves the Owl, which is Beast bonus, if I'm not mistaken. Thursday's Archer class. Archer used to be pretty good back in the day. Still pretty good these days. Has that 15% insta-kill, has Green Storm, has 50% mana start naturally. Overall, still pretty decent. Used to be the best hero class in the game. Nowadays is pretty slightly above average, but still very usable. And you probably see me using a lot whenever we need like a Green Storm kind of hero class, as is among one of the better Green Storm ones that have 50% mana start, with the other one generally being the one without 50% mana start, the Warden one, because it has Dispel. But anyways, pretty good hero class overall. And then Friday, we have ourselves a new faction! We can't see it right now because we have Primal Rifts, but after Tuesday, Wednesday going forward, we'll be able to see the new faction. And the new faction is for, of course, the new kingdom, the Mydnight Kingdom. So we'll be getting 4 more new troops with that, a whole new faction, and we'll go over that more on this Friday since we don't actually have it out yet. However, yeah, brand new faction for the new kingdom. And the kingdom will almost be doubling in troops because it's getting 4 more! So if you didn't buy the paid side of the other pass, you almost are legitimately doubling the amount of Mydnight troops there are as of this Friday. So we'll get that, we'll get a new weapon, we'll get the pet that boosts them, so maybe we'll finally have a synergistic team out of Mydnight, because I didn't actually check to see what the troops do, so I sure hope Mydnight has a somewhat viable team to any degree after after this Friday. I would sure hope so, but we'll find out. Anyway, so far, didn't actually peek at this yet. Do we have anything good in here? Let's see. Not seeing anything, not seeing anything. Still nothing. Sir Quite Hadley, you generally wouldn't craft legends, but he is used a decent bit. Remember when Farish Ra was good? Those were the days. These days, it's not worth getting Farish Ra. Yeah, there used to be a method back in the day where it would actually be good to rush like a single or even double Farish Ra. However, if you want to do that now, go get yourself an Iron Hawk or 2. Or ideally 2 Iron Hawks or 3. But yeah, instead, Iron Hawk is basically the new Farish Ra. When it comes to things that you want to rush in order to get a bunch of resources, it used to be Farish Ra, but nowadays, 100% do not get Farish Ra first. Go all in on Iron Hawk. Save in all your diamonds so you can get double Iron Hawk at minimum, and you're good to go. But as far as other things to craft, which is not Farish Ra, but as far as other things to craft this week, I would say Phoenicia is probably the strongest thing here. Phoenicia is a bit irrelevant these days if you have Diamantina and or Stellarix, however, as well as Scourge of Honor. However, it does still fill that gap. It does still have double damage. It still has one of the highest physical full AoEs in the game, only behind that of Diamantina and effectively Stellarix's ability. But it's still pretty good. It's a nice alternative if you don't want to go for any of the Dragonite dragons anytime soon, as it does take quite a grind to end up getting them, and could take even upwards of a year, depending on if you're just getting them passively without spending any additional resources, if you're just trying to get them off of vault events and perfect dungeons. So it can take a little while if you're not trying to rush it. So Phoenicia can kind of hold you over until then if you're kind of earlier on in the game, but still looking for something like Diamantina effectively. Biggest downside of it is it does require Firestorm, and specifically Firestorm, not just any storm, like some things from the Kingdom of Suncrest. But it does require specifically Red Storm. But as long as you have that, it hits really hard, as it will double all of its damage, which actually puts it into the high damage range that it has. But it is no longer the highest, so not as viable as it used to be. But it is a good alternative troop for a little while within that time frame. And as far as weapons, we pretty much have a lot of the standard ones. Even though I don't think I showed for a single team, I was going to, but end up trading it out. I would say Elemental Bow is probably the highest priority pickup here. There's a lot of use cases for this, a lot of really strong Elemental teams in the game. Honestly, I would still say to this day, Elemental is one of the strongest typings. Not the strongest in the game. Most of that is carried by Elementals, of course. However, it is still pretty high up there. And Elemental Bow has really good synergy with it. It creates a bunch of blue and green, which synergizes really well with pretty much everything that you have under that, including Mirage Queen, which will generally be on all Elemental teams, as it has 50% mana start. But it's just really good for mana accumulation. It ends up getting into everything you need with, it has a Green Storm, ends up feeding into everything that you need with Mirage Queen, which is normally on your team for Elemental. This works out really well. So if you're going to get anything this week, get Elemental Bow. Oddly enough, I use this Crown a lot. This isn't a weapon you would normally use, but there's a lot of Forest of Thorns restricted stuff. So if you're looking to something to boost up your Underspire or anything else related to Forest of Thorn restriction this week, I would definitely say the Oaken Crown is probably the way to go. I think I used it on like 3 different teams, oddly enough, with other suggested teams. So definitely a pretty nice pickup to have. Aside from that, pretty standard stuff, if you just want to get them for completionist sake. So, anything else I wanted to mention? So PvP, oddly enough, very similar to the first week we had PvP. Is there anything even different? I guess that being divine, but otherwise, isn't this... Look to me. Isn't this almost the exact same we had? Because we have Strict Suncrest here. We have Orc over there. We have Giant, Stormheim over here. Is this not just like a repeat of the first PvP week we had? Because it sure seems very similar. Actually, I didn't even check. Are the pets repeat too? Yeah, we actually have had these two before now that I'm looking at it, right? Oh, that's weird. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, we've had these two as for silver before. This will be the first week we don't need to farm silver marks. I'm still going to, of course, for future weeks. That's kind of interesting. I didn't even notice that till just now. As far as all the teams are pretty much going to be the same. The only one that really took a hit from the nerf, as far as like teams that might need to change slightly, is your Suncrest and Strix team. Because you can no longer go Egress, Ehe Cattle. Well, you can go Egress, Ehe Cattle. But the problem with doing that now is the amount of mana accumulation. Of course, Egress got the nerf. You can even see the little down arrow there. But if you're going something like this, of course, which was pretty meta before, the big issue that you're going to have here is Egress does not spawn any gems anymore. It'll be creating 10 or 11 if you have it shiny like this. So in our case, 11 because we have a shiny level 2. Also, you do not get refunded for any of that shininess. So even though we'd spent all those shiny keys and everything for it, it does get to keep its shininess, but we do not get those keys back now, even though it's useless now. But yeah, it does have its 11 gem spawn instead of its 10 at least, but that's still quite a bit of a nerf compared to the 15 or 16 that it would have had otherwise. So instead, we're probably going to have to build a little bit more, just for example here, like into a Quetzalma. So like almost something like this even. Quetzalma, Ehe Cattle, Finesse. Or even going into a single AoE and kind of using like Azachi. Though do keep in mind you will need a Stormfur, but in this case we have Ehe Cattle for that. Or go some a little bit more like this, where you use Zachi for just AoE spam, and even a cheaper team if you're looking for something cheap, obviously. Zachi, Ehe Cattle, Finesse, or even double up on the Finesse for more damage. Like something like this is more how you have to build it now, instead of just clicking Egress until you win. So obviously Egress taking a big hit there, though Ehe Cattle still as broken as ever, so at least that's still nice there for teams like that. And obviously making the banner very yellow and brown. But yeah, you are going to need to adjust on some of those. But aside from that, every other team's pretty much the same. Whatever you'd run for Orcs the same. Whatever you'd run for most of these categories, at least this week that we have, is pretty much the same. But it will affect quite a few of the other ones in the future. But the only ones that are really affected this week are Strix and Suncrest specifically. Anyway, speaking of teams, let's go into a bunch of teams. Actually, let's go over here. Keep forgetting you can't go over to the other section. These were just all the nerfed ones. I'm not sure if I fully showed all of them, but it is Chalcedony, Egress. I meant to do this at the beginning, and I think I completely forgot to go to the second tab. But I'm pretty sure most of you guys know what these troops are. But the troops that are affected by this nerf are Chalcedony, Egress, Hippolyta, Huntmaster Ouroboros, Secra Darkwood, Sir Aluin, Todd Greenwood, and I technically put this here. It's not refundable, but this one came in this week, the Adulwing. But you know, this one and all future ones have also been nerfed. But you know, that one's not an old one, so it's not refundable or anything. But those are all the ones affected. All 8 the ones affected, as well as every future Journey troop to ever be existing in the future. Anyways, so as far as the Journey event team, honestly, I kind of want to go put the Ruby Mask here now. I think I will, just because, honestly, I think the Ruby Mask might actually be more common than Corrupted Scythe. But now that I remember that we actually can put that there, why not? I completely forgot to use brown. Otherwise, I would have put it there to begin with. But there we go. Do I even need to change the banner? Honestly, I think it's fine. Actually, let me double check. We're not using purple. Can we get, let's make some on-the-fly adjustments. Let's see. We need minus purple. We need some yellow, and then ideally yellow-brown. I don't think that banner exists. Yellow-red? Yellow-brown. It does exist. Oh, look at that. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed. So yeah, that's what we're going for. Ruby Mask, Bork, Pan, Adulwing. Using Mech because this doesn't exist, though you do need to have it on your team. We're pretty much just entirely using the Ruby Mask. Bork is here for mana accumulation. Pan is here to pretend it does something. And that is pretty much the entire team. Let me just double check. Is there a different beast that does true damage now? Since we adjusted the other thing, might as well check. Let's say base rarity. That's not where base rarity is. Base rarity. If we check over here... oh yeah, it has to be brown too. For the restriction on the thing. I was like, wait, why do we have so many options here? We have this thing, I guess, if you want to go Basilisk. But it already has color overlay, so I'm just going to go with Pan. Pan's fun. If nothing else, when there's one left, it can still get a kill. Same as the Devourer if we want to. But for the most part, it's basically just spam Ruby Mask until you win. That's pretty much the entire plan here. Deal true damage to all enemies, then creates a bunch of booty gems and explodes 5 gems. Well, whatever weapon you want to run there, obviously it doesn't have to be that, but that's pretty much the game plan for that one. Next we have the lower rarity team, which ends up just going basically Bork Black Manacle as the main base of the team instead of Bork into whatever weapon you want to run that's stronger than Black Manacle. In this case, we're just spamming Bork with Mech once again, 50% mana start, using this as our main mana accumulation. I put the bullet here just because there's not too many good beasts that are low rarity, and this has a chance to just randomly get a Devour. You don't have a way to put more brown onto the board. I guess you could if you go Mountain Crusher, but it's much better to have a damaging weapon here rather than Mountain Crusher. And on this team, you're definitely going to have to cast Addle Wing a little bit more. Luckily, this one does count as a beast, so this is pretty much a full beast team. The only thing that isn't is your Mech Hero class. And you do kind of still want it to be Mech just to get Bork rolling a little bit quicker. You could still put it a beast hero class if you really wanted to, but I personally feel like you gain a bit more of a benefit from running Mech, or even any other strong hero class if you want to run like Elementalist or something similar. And just hope you get to Devour off of this. This is just kind of here for the little bit of pokes for finishing, and Bork to get everything rolling so you can just kill out with Black Manacle. It's pretty much a game plan for the Journey event there. As far as the faction is concerned, we have green, purple restrictions, so you can use anything in that regard. We basically have a Rowan quick kill, just without the little bit of extra mana, but we put a Beatrix here for cleanse and just extra utility. For the higher rarity team, run your personal favorite Thrall Leprechaun. This time around, if you're going to go for Stellaryx for once, I try not to show Stellaryx too often, but as more time goes on, more people will have it eventually. But of course, this Stellaryx is just a placeholder for anything. This could be Zolgoth, this could be Catharix, this could be Diamantina, this could be pretty much anything you want to put there. In this kind of route, we're going down the Stellaryx route, but it's pretty standard Thrall Leprechaun. You just put hero in first slot as a tanky hero class with your weapon of choice, either damage or a little bit of mana accumulation. Put a Thrall Leprechaun in between, and put your strongest damage source you have. Simplest thing would be something like, or maybe not absolute simplest, but most straightforward would be something like Zolgoth, whereas the highest ones that you can end up doing are Diamantina or Stellaryx there. As far as the pure factions are concerned, one nice diverse team of Alderfathers can do pretty well. The basic game plan is to kill out your first Alderfather on the first fight. Once it is dead, you cast any other Alderfather, and this will end up summoning a Trent or a Green Golem. If it summons a Green Golem, kill your Green Golem. If it summons a Treant, win the battle. You want this Treant to be on your team. You're not allowed to start with a Treant, so you can't simply just go and do something like this and go put a Trent right there. You cannot do this. This will not count as pure faction if you start like this. Like doing this will make it so you do not get pure faction credit. However, if you start with Alderfather, kill your Alderfather, and then after your Alderfather dies, you replace it with a summon of Trent, that will work. You just simply can't start with it. But you're allowed to summon and end the faction with it, and it still counts as pure faction, even though Trent isn't from the faction, of course. So you basically just want to get this thing to summon Trent, and then win the entire thing with Trent. It's generally not used too often, but it's pretty good in the context of this faction. It gains a bunch of attack and armor, and anything that does that in Underspire, or Underworld, tends to be pretty good. And on top of that, you get a bunch of skull spam from Alderfather, so not only are you getting extra skull damage, but you're getting skull spam to facilitate that skull damage. And that's pretty much the entire premise of the faction. Next, we have ourselves Underspire, not to be confused with Underworld. Here, I did actually remove, this was the team, I think, that I removed all the mythics from. And it's mostly because they don't have full AoE, and I just went full AoE instead. So we went with Sylvain Moore, a little bit of an old meta troop. Actually has a really interesting interaction with how his final trait works. He retroactively takes extra, he retroactively re-entangles the next troop in line. So let's say you take an extra turn skull, 4x skull, 5x skull, something similar. And you kill out the first slot. It does not actually waste the entangle on the first slot. It will kill the first slot and then entangle whatever the next slot is. So it does actually adapt pretty nicely for that, which can synergize pretty good with skull spam if you want to put like an Alderfather or something on a team. But in this case, we're just running double AoE. We're running Sylvain Moore to hit all enemies. We're running King Avalon to hit all enemies. If your Sylvain Moore dies, you have resummon off of King Avalon. We're using our weapon to hold down the line. It's Pure Forest of Thorns. And your team will maintain full Forest of Thorns because King Avalon summons a Forest of Thorns troop. So even if you have a troop die, it'll just be replaced with something else from Forest of Thorns. Maintain the full boost ratio from the crown, and you just keep spamming King Avalon until you won, and keep meat shielding with Sylvain Moore and or whatever King Avalon summons. And of course, Daughter of Yasmin is one of the strongest things from this kingdom, very similar to Ihi Cattle. Actually, I believe they're the only two in the game right now that have the full combination of Empower into a convert that is their own color while having Storm. I believe there's only two in the game that have that exact combination. There are a few that are kind of close, but only two have that full combo. And hopefully we'll have it for every color. The only two colors that have it right now are green and yellow. Green off of Daughter of Yasmin and yellow off of the Ihi Cattle. They are a very strong troop type, and I hope we get the other 4 colors at some time this year. And I think we will, given that we got the other 2 pretty close together. So hopefully over the course of the year, we'll get it for all of the other 4 colors that currently do not have this combination. But yeah, they're both really strong, and any future troop that gets that full combo will also be very strong. Having the Storm, having the color into themselves, and having the Empower all in one. And it just works out really, really well. You could pretty much just put it with anything of similar color and just works out nicely. As far as the lower rarity Underspire, we end up going down a Farce Troll spam into just whatever greens you have. In this case, we end up going with Emerald Giant and Alderfather. Obviously, if you have better, put better there. However, this is pretty much the cheapest we could go with while still keeping it low rarity. I consider Alderfather low rarity because you can just get it from the faction. Honestly, it might even be easier to get than Farce Troll or Emerald Giant if you happen to be missing them. Otherwise, if you're missing one, you kind of just double up. Farce Troll could easily be replaced with a different mana accumulator. That's pretty much the game plan there. And finally, the last one we have going on here, we have the Archer class event, which is specifically both Elf and the Kingdom of Forest of Thorn. So unfortunately, this kingdom does not have that many elves. However, it does still have Daughter of Yasmin. So the main premise here is use Daughter of Yasmin into any green weapon of choice. This is, of course, as cheaply as possible, would be War and Peace. But if you have Dustbringer or something better, you can obviously use that instead. I just wanted to show it here, so it's a little bit cheaper to copy-paste with the War and Peace there. But whatever your strongest green weapon is that hits all enemies, you'd probably want to put there instead if you have something better than War and Peace. But War and Peace would still get you through the event pretty quickly if you're just looking to get, of course, the free battles done. And that is all the teams, all which will be in the description below. Don't forget to go and refund your troops if you want some very wacky discontinued troops, in a sense. To have a gold elite level, not fully traded troop like Bandit or other ones. Because I'll probably do this to all of them and see how long we can keep them untraded. Then we'll have a whole page of fully gold elite level troops that aren't fully traded. There isn't much of a benefit to it other than the fact that they'll be discontinued after the fact. Because after this week, they won't be refundable again. Like, for example, you can't make your Bandit right now have no stealthy while being gold elite. That is physically impossible and probably will be for the rest of time. But yeah, it's just kind of something unique to have, if nothing else. So you can only do that this week. I'm not sure if you have all this week to refund it, but the sooner the better. I assume you have all week, though they might cut it off at a certain point, by like Friday or something. I have no clue, but if you're going to refund them earlier rather than later, as you have until the end of the week, or possibly even less time than that. I'm not sure. It's been a while since we've had a refund option, probably like a good 4 years, but yeah, it's kind of sad to see all these nerfed. Honestly, I was actually mentioning this on stream, like before this nerf even came out. What I really wish they would have done with these is kept their initial gem spawn, but cap it at 12 plus 1, you know, plus 1 if they're shiny. So that way, it would still be the full boost ratio of 3 plus 3 per ally, but it would be capped at 3 allies. This would solve 2 things. It would allow you to use a team that isn't pure whatever that is. So, you know, you could use a 3 construct team and still get the full bonus rather than it being forced into a 4 construct team. But it would also make it so they are nerfed, but still do something. Because 12 or 13 gem spawns for what their new mana cost is of 15, like that can still be usable in the current state of the game. But 10 or 11 gem spawn for 15 mana costs, they are basically all dead content. Not to mention you have to use 4 of the type to even get that bonus. If you use only 3, you're only creating 8 or 9 gems. 8 or 9 for 15 mana costs is pretty bad compared to the many plethora of options we have these days. So yeah, hopefully they'll find some kind of in-between to do. I'm not sure exactly what they'll do, if they will get buffed in the future. But in the current state of the game, they are nearly unusable unless you lack literally every other option, or it's a category that just doesn't really have that many options, notably Centaur and a few others that just literally have almost nothing other than maybe like Wardbreaker or something. In those categories where you'd probably be forced to have to use it just because of lack of better options. But in categories that already have better options, you're probably just not going to need the troop that much anymore. Especially like dragons. Dragons do not lack better options, that's for sure. Like, this was fun to have for it, but it definitely was by no means was really needed. As dragons already have so many strong things that just work really well. So, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them in the future. But as it currently stands, they are nearly unusable, but hopefully they'll be able to get into some kind of in-between at some point. As, honestly, those journey trips were pretty fun. But I don't know. Some teams definitely got compromised from it, but overall, every single category still generally has quite a few teams that can end up using, with a few exceptions like Centaurs if you don't have some of the higher rarity stuff and stuff like that. But I don't know. We'll mostly have to wait it out and just kind of see what ends up happening with it over time. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. If you have any thoughts on anything else that they could do to rebalance this a little bit better, feel free to leave it there. I'm not sure if they ever watch these videos, but who knows? Maybe I could relay it to someone. I have a couple contacts with them. Maybe I can get the info to them. Though how much of an impact that will make? Probably almost none, but worth a shot. Anyways, guys, hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. I will catch you guys later. Feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps a lot. It's greatly appreciated. And I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.